Hey everybody, this is Rudy Sarzo and this is my podcast, The Dash, where we talk about everybody's journey here because we're all connected somehow, some way, and this is a way of finding out how we're connected here.
So Rudy, before you do this,
yes sir,
I would like to say, and you can either use this or not, what an
if it's good,
honor.
use it.
Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure to be playing with you in this band at this time. Whoever thought that would happen? And just for all your people out there that are going to be listening to you, Rudy is as good a person as he is a bass player.
Well, thank you so much, Gary. By the way, this is Garry Peterson, the drummer for every single record that you've ever heard of the Guess Who. This is the man that you're listening to. As a matter of fact, if you ever listen to the radio for the last, 40, 50 years, you have heard him play.
I never think of it in terms of that. That's the first time anybody's ever said that to me, but that's probably correct.
Well, it's true. It's true.
There was an album that Jim, when Jim had first re-put this band back together, he had an album that was out that I wasn't on.
What year was that?
Gosh, it's somewhere in the 80s.
But was that a studio album?
I think it was. But I mean, nobody had ever heard of it.
Yeah. Was it independent or a major label? Or?
I think it was a label from Canada. I believe it was Donald K. Donald's label.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. A Canadian label.
Yeah, but as far as all the RCAs,
no, all the hits and all the stuff.
All the hits. How many hits?
I don't know.
What, 17? I heard it's a 17. 17 top 40 hits.
Yeah, it's probably around there. I think it goes. Sometimes it goes 14. Sometimes it goes 17.
Yeah.
But it was. I was fortunate to play on a lot of good music, and that's why we're still out here playing that music.
Well, the reason why I say 17 is because we have played with bands that have actually had more top 40 hits, let's say Three Dog Night. Mm-hmm. And this is how I find out how come Three Dog Night goes on as the headliner and we're the special guest.
Right.
Because, one of the guys in the band said, well, Three Dog Night has 23 or 21?
Yeah, they have much more than us, I believe.
But on the other hand, the Guess Who has written, I would say, the vast majority of the hits, whereas Three Dog Night, they relied on outside writers.
Yeah, they had different people in L.A. and...
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, hit songs, and I'm just going to go right to the core here. American Woman.
Yes.
That was a band collaboration. Tell me, how did that come about?
We were playing, after we had the first 4 hits...
Mm-hmm.
That would be These Eyes, Laughing Undone, which was a double-sided hit.
Huge.
And No Time.
Wow.
So we had come back to Canada. The Native Sons made good in the United States of America. We were at the top of our game, and people were crazy about us in Canada, naturally, because it was something from the country. So we were playing in Toronto at I think it was in Scarborough, at a curling rink during the summer, which there was no ice in, obviously. They just had the concrete floor, and we played 2 sets that night. All the people from RCA Canada and all the different media people were all backstage. I remember it was like a crowd of people. It was like crazy. As you know, you've seen those before. And... in between sets, we were kind of, intermingling with these people, and we couldn't find Burton. And so we said, well, let's go on stage and we'll bang our drums and hit the instruments a little bit. He'll know that, who knows, he might have been out toking somewhere, you know what I mean, with one of the fans, which was kind of usual in those days.
It was the 60s, right?
Yeah,
the 60s.
Yeah, it was 69, yeah.
69.
So we went up there, and of course, I was listening to Buddy Miles at the time. And the Electric Flag.
Electric Flag, yeah.
Grew up that album, he played double bass drums. And you think, and this is the real story of American Woman, because if you really think of American Woman, it's based on a double bass drum figure. Do-do-do-do-da, 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 do-do-do-do-da. That's what it is. And I was listening to Buddy Miles, and I was being inspired to play double bass drums again. And so when we went on stage, as you know, at the sound check, what do I do when I sit down behind my drums? I start playing a groove, and then different guys in the band jump on it. We did that last night. I was playing something, and Derek right away started playing something to it, right?
Yeah, last night at soundcheck.
Yeah, at soundcheck. Yeah, and so that's how it happened. I started playing that figure, that groove, and then Randy played, and Jim played along with it, and Burton came running up on stage and started babbling whatever when it was in his head at the time, and the crowd went wild. They loved it, and what we did is said, "Hey, we got to keep this in the show." And so every night we kept playing it, and it kind of morphed. You know, the words would change. We'd change, not so much from what the original was, because it's a one chord song. You know, it's an E. You can't really do much with it, and once you establish that rhythm, it's there from beginning to end. So it kind of refined itself, and then we went into our after maybe a month tour. We went into the RCA studio in Chicago, which was at 1 North Wacker Drive, I think, and we cut the song.
I gotta tell you, as a fan, I've been listening to that song. You know, I mean, we're not that far from age-wise, you know, but I mean, you started playing when you were 3 years old, which is something that we're gonna get into later.
Well, my dad tells me when I was 2 years old, but we'll get into that later.
Professionally. But I gotta tell you, to as a bass player, who, you know, my goal is be part of the rhythm section, to actually be playing with the real deal, the person who actually came up with the riff, was there when it was recorded, and after all these years, to be able to get on stage with you every night and play that song, that's really a blessing. Because it's really a unique experience for me. Now, it's really interesting because the way you're going to play it is completely different for me. Not musically, but relating to it as a reference about a time. When you play that song, you go back to that moment when you guys started to like put the song together, and it morphed into what it is today on the radio.
Right.
For me, it's a whole different experience because I listen to it. I play it as a fan. You play it as the guy who actually recorded the song and co-wrote the song. You know.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of joy when we play that song. I would say when we play any Guess Who song, there's a lot of joy for me to play it because I grew up with that music.
Yeah. I don't play any of the songs really like they are on the records, because I've advanced in my style and playing rhythmically, and I think I've kind of... It's not that I'm playing that much different, but it's the way I'm playing it. American Woman today is much heavier and grooves a lot more than it did on the record. The record has that young, enthusiastic teen spirit that we had when we were just starting in this music industry. You go through so much between then and now. That's 50 years almost, 45, 50 years. You mature, your playing matures, everything changes, but you have to kind of stay within the limits of the song that was recorded. So not many people would know, the average person wouldn't know that I'm a little outside of where I was before, but it's like I'm trying to play it better without playing it different. Every song, like every night when I play These Eyes, it's like a game with myself. I gotta play this song and groove it better than I ever did before. That's hard. If you're not going to change too much, you can't start going crazy in the song. But it's kind of evolved along with my playing.
That's really interesting because when you play it, you are branching out. You've been branching out from that song, from like probably the day after you went in the studio,
Absolutely.
you guys started playing it live, and the song has its own growth. It's very organic.
Yes.
But still is rooted in the original way that it was recorded.
Yeah, you can't step outside of that.
Yeah.
However, you can morph it in the feeling of how you play it. And I think the way we play it today is much different than the record. However, you can never compare to the record. That was done in a time and a space, and that's there forever. You know, it's forever memorialized on the tape.
Absolutely. But for me as a fan, now playing in the band, it's going back to that time and place when I used to play that song in parties. You know, party bands growing up, you know. So it puts me back in that joyful youth days of my youth.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just a celebration of those times.
Yeah,
because I play it.
Because I've been in this band so long, I never and not played with a lot of different top artists like you've had the opportunity. I only know that experience that you just described from playing with Bachman Turner Overdrive, because I didn't play on those records, except I grew up with them even after Randy left the band. So that was my only experience with playing something that I listened to and liked, and now I'm playing with the band BTO on that when I did the reunion.
That is so interesting, and a lot of people might not be aware of that you actually later on in the 80s, you guys were the Bachman Turner Overdrive was the special guest to Van Halen on
the
tour.
5150 tour. Yeah.
So I mean
that was their reunion. That was the only reunion until Randy got back with Fred just lately. But that was really the first time they had gotten together.
I really want to talk about that, but you know what? Let's go to the beginning. How you started playing, because you told me when I first joined the band something that I'll never forget is you cannot remember when you were not a drummer.
Yeah, because everybody can say, well, I started playing guitar when I was 9, or I started playing guitar when I was 12, or even some 15, you know. My father was a drummer, so he started teaching me when I was 2 years old. And you don't have memory when you're 2 years old. So if I was to ask anybody that's listening or watching this, do you remember the day you started to walk? Well, we know that nobody does. So for me, playing drums is like walking. I've always done it. You've always remember walking.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you get up from a chair, you don't think about it.
Exactly.
You just go. So when I sit behind a set of drums, I have no idea what's going to happen. I just play.
Love it.
Which is kind of a weird...
And when you say 2 years old, this is what year?
It would be 1947.
47. This is before... And this is before rock and roll.
Yeah, no, I was playing big band and jazz, yeah. That's what my dad...
So up until you were playing, what was the last jazz gig you were doing? Or some of the last jazz gigs you were doing?
Well, you know, I actually dabbled into it probably into the 80s.
Oh, really?
Because at home, you know, if the band was broken up in 75, mm-hmm. I went away from music for a few years, mm-hmm. but then I started playing with local musicians, and you know, I was just thinking the other day, Dave Jandrish, who is he's the head of the Neighboring Rights organization in Toronto. He's the guy that signs all the checks. I played with him mm-hmm. in the 80s at gigs around Winnipeg. You know, he was a piano player, jazz piano player.
But let's say prior to the Guess Who, any of the jazz giants you were playing
just
locally?
Lenny Bro.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you when you were playing with Lenny Bro?
I was 18.
18.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Lenny Bro, Dave Young on bass.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness. And you guys were the house band for?
Yeah, it was at the Town and Country in Winnipeg. And our band went into the lounge in that nightclub. I couldn't go in because I wasn't 21 at the time. So they put me in